Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick from Bible Dingers, and today is going to be a special interview. See, Bible Dingers podcast joined the B.A.R network, and today we are interviewing Dawain Atkinson, who is a major part, the CEO of the B.A.R network, and he has been such a blessing to us that we wanted you to get to know him as well. So we're going to hear his testimony, how he came about starting the B.A.R network, all that wonderful stuff. So, Dawain, why don't you take a moment and tell everyone about yourself?
Okay. So first, thank you guys for having me on this interview. Definitely an honor, and definitely glad to have you guys a part of the network. I want to start with that. I guess a little bit about me. I grew up in a little small town called Turkey, North Carolina, which is super small, super country town. I always joke with people and tell them that on one side of the sign it says "Welcome to Turkey," on the other side it says "Thanks for coming," because it's just that quick. You're in and out. Like I said, grew up in a small town. My parents, Christian home. We were farmers. So I used to pick, pepper and squash and crop tobacco and all of that, man. And church was just a part of our life, man. Church, I didn't know anything outside of church. Like as a kid, we went to Sunday school. My mom and dad cleaned the church on Fridays, so like it was, Monday night Bible study, Tuesday night prayer meeting, Wednesday night choir rehearsal. Friday night we was cleaning the church, and then on Sunday. So I spent a lot of time in church. I actually taught myself how to play drums while we were cleaning church, and so I started playing drums for the church. And at a very young age, I walked the aisle, man. I never forget the sermon that convicted me to walk the aisle, to come down, to give my life to Christ. And the title of the sermon was, "What in hell do you want?" And I was like, whoa, I don't want nothing. And so I was in the 5th grade. I walked the aisle, came down, and I believe really had a true conversion at that moment, and a true heart change. But when I got to 6th grade, this was middle school, and at the end of 5th grade, they called me preacher boy, because I was, a little Christian, had my little red Bible, and I wanted to, I knew the part, and I knew how to act the part, but I didn't know about sanctification and living things out and just studying, things like that. So when I ran into adversity in 6th grade, I wanted to be cool, man. I didn't want to be the preacher boy no more. And so I turned left from from my salvation. At least I thought I did. And was athlete, musician, and pretty much became a womanizer. Because you're an athlete, you're a musician, you tend to attract quite a few. And so at the age and time, I didn't turn down quite a few. And that was me, man. I was a hardcore sinner, but I knew how to play the part. So I still would come on Sunday and play the drums. I remember many nights, out drinking and smoking and fornicating. And then I would always come and play the drums. So I always tell people I was the worst kind of sinner, man, because I looked the part. Like I was the one mom and dad were cool with, because hey, Dawain goes to church every Sunday. He's clean, he's with a button up, not knowing I had all the worst intentions for, their daughter or whoever, man. And so fast forward through high school, college, all that same rugged life, kind of double life pretty much. And then after college, my I guess kind of college main girlfriend, because I was, really trying to be a player all the time, was pregnant. And that's when my son came into the world. And that moment was like, what am I going to teach my son? Like, I know I'm living this double life. I know, I'm living one way in people's eyes and another way behind. And that was like a turning point. I always tell people the finding out that I was having a son was a turning point for me, because it made me think about what example am I leading for him. And I wish it was enough to convert me, man. But unfortunately, it wasn't. And God used the very thing that I was I kept on a pedestal, which was my pride. I was a very prideful person because I thought I could, I could play the game, I can outsmart women and blah blah blah. And so one night, there used to be this system with old phones. People might not remember this. It depends on how old your audience is, but it used to be a thing called three-way, where two people call you, and and two people get on the line and they call you. I mean, it's regular now on a cell phone, but it was like a big thing back in the late 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. And so two girls that
Yeah, I still three-way.
Yeah, man. Yeah. But see, cell phone, you can tell somebody else is on there, but with that old phone with the cord that go all the way to the kitchen, you didn't know.
Yeah.
So two girls found out about each other, got on three-way, didn't tell me.
Oh,
And
no.
yeah, man. And I'm macking the one where the other one's, listening. And then they both pretty much just cussed me out for about 20-30 minutes back and forth. And that night, man, God used that pride to crush me when I was out, because I was prideful. I was, I thought I was a good player, and the fact that I got caught, he used that, man. And I was staying with my mom at the time, because my son's mom, we broke up. Funny crazy story about that is we technically broke up, and then she found out she was pregnant like a couple weeks later. So it was crazy. I was back home with my mom. And that night I rolled out of bed, man, and onto my knees, and I was like, Lord, I'm making a mess of my life. I know what's right. I know, you're the way, please take me back. That was my prayer, man. And I wish I could say I got up and it was happily ever after, and I found Reformed theology. I wish that was the case, man. I found sound biblical. No, that wasn't the case. I actually got up and turned on TBN. That's the first place I went. I remember the first sermon that I saw was I think it might have been Joel Osteen. And so, to me, that was Christianity. And I started to follow Joel Osteen and Creflo Dollar and T.D. Jakes, and I would sit home, just kind of bringing things back in order, man, and trying to pursue my Christian journey or whatever. And I was following all of these prosperity, preachers and TBN and health and wealth and all of that, man. And that was, to me, I guess kind of back up, the church that I grew up in was pretty biblically sound. They didn't get into a lot of the charismatic stuff. It was a Baptist church, but what I thought those guys on TV, I thought that was like the next level. Because think about it, as a musician, as a sports player, the people at the highest level, they're on TV.
Yeah.
So I assume like, hey, these guys, they're the pros, man. They on TV, they know more than my little local pastor back here. Let me follow what they're doing and all of that. And that's how I fell into that trap, man. And dating myself, I met my wife on MySpace. Yeah, man, MySpace, old school.
I remember those days.
Some of your listeners might not even know what MySpace is. Yeah. But yeah, so I met my wife on MySpace. She happened to live in Greenville, South Carolina, and was going to a huge mega church called Redemption World Outreach Center. And so I moved there, and we both were at the church, very active. The pastor was actually on TBN as well. We actually made trips to Atlanta to TBN and watched him live. We were in the audience, all of that. And so I was there on staff, just thinking like, okay, this is the next thing in God, man, talking, speaking in tongues and laying hands and running around the church and all of that stuff, man, just really engulfed in it. And then I noticed money being kind of the center of everything. Like literally everything was centered around money. Every song, every time they spoke, there was something with money. It was all about money, man. And it kind of set me back, because just thinking about my natural dad, like he provided, like he never asked, and this guy's supposed to be my spiritual father, and all he's doing is asking, he's trying to collect money, man. And so it made me kind of step back. It's like, what's really going on here? That same time, me and my wife were hosting dance conferences. My wife was in the liturgical dance, dancing during the church and all of that. And so we actually were hosting dance conferences. and there was a couple from Texas, and they were apostles. They were two apostles from Texas, and we brought them in to speak. And they was like, you guys are so talented. You're so gifted. You guys need to take our ministry course. And, you know, we didn't know. So, okay, we'll take it. It's like, it's a 5-fold ministry course. When it's over, you know, after being evaluated, the Holy Spirit let us know what 5-fold ministry gift you guys have. So me and my wife took the course. You know, we sat in on the calls, and we read the books, and we wrote the papers, and we went to Texas to the release graduation or whatever. I did my little sermon that I had to prepare and do for the group and all that. And that night, they like released us, and we didn't know. It was like, you know, we're going. God is saying that you guys are apostles, and so me and my wife were ordained, air quotes for those that are listening, apostles. Right. and really, you know, I don't know. Like that night, I try to think back to that night because I've been talking to Brandon Kimber and AGTV about this part of my story. That night, man, I remember just feeling a weight, you know, on my shoulders, as if it was a lot of pressure, you know, now that I have this title of apostle. And it never really like was like, when people would call me that, my head would fall, like, you know, just, I didn't feel worthy, you know. And one of the requirements to be an apostle is you have to have a Jesus experience where you see Jesus or whatever, you get a Jesus visitation. And this is where I let people know that a lot of the stories that you hear and see are embellished. Because my story was embellished that I submitted. Like, so I originally, this was let me tell you what happened, and let me tell you what I reported, and the reason why we became apostles. So what happened, I was headed to work, and I was just, you know, at that time, I think I was still struggling with pouring some, and I was just feeling like I was like, man, I'm just not worthy. I'm just dirty, blah, blah, blah. And in my mind, you know, to me, the Holy Spirit, in my mind, I felt like, you know, hey, you know, you are worthy, you know, you are good enough. And that was the original account. And I was like, you know, in that moment, it was like, you know, that was like, wow, that's what I want to hear, you know. But by the time I told the story, I'm riding down the road, and Jesus appears and says that while sitting on the passenger side. So yeah, I mean, and I'll be honest, man, like I embellished that story. That is something I embellished. And that was I guess that was also part of the burden, man, of just feeling like, you know, I'm not worthy of that title. And I really didn't know what scripture said about apostles and what the requirements were, besides what I read in other books, which all the books weren't scripture, you know, and then the few references that we had were nitpicked, you know, they were pieces, you know, gave some apostles, and you know, it was pieces. It was never the context and all of that, kind of hindsight. And so just on that journey of just, you know, being called an apostle, and which simultaneously being called an apostle and seeing the issues with the Word of Faith charismatic movement, I actually developed this Facebook page called Be Not Deceived, which few people may be familiar with, but Be Not Deceived is a Facebook page. Right now, I think it's at about maybe 20 to 30,000 likes. But I created a page because I wanted to expose false teachers. Remind you, as I was an apostle. But I wanted to expose the, you know, false teaching of the prosperity gospel, you know, because I saw firsthand the corruption and how people were abusing.
So even as apostles, in most part, are name it and claim it.
So not all. So some of them are, and some of them aren't as much, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that's the thing you got to think about. The name and the claim it isn't the exact same thing as, you know, being a prosperity preacher, because name and claim is more or less word of faith, and then prosperity preacher is actually kind of in its own thing. A lot of it is so blended, and that's why it's so easy to get confused and not put together. But yeah, so yeah, I was speaking, declaring, decreeing, but I wasn't, you know, saying everybody should prosper and you need to give and all of that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that was the difference. And that's what I was fighting, man. And so created the Be Not Deceived page, brought people in like Virgil Walker, T. Barlow, people that I would, became friends with on Facebook, and we started building that page. And then when I met Virgil, Virgil was reformed, and I was like, this guy's a Calvinist, like, but I wanted versity, I wanted different people in, that were Christians, and I didn't even really know what it meant at the time. And so as Virgil is saying stuff and kind of putting out these hints here and there, man, I'm kind of dealing with, I already feel like I'm not supposed to be an apostle, so I just kind of laid it down, really didn't make a public, like, no longer an apostle thing. I just kind of separated myself from that camp and started to really look into Calvinism and things like that. And my coworker heard me talking to somebody about Calvinism, and at the time I was thinking, I was watching debates, like, I'm a reach out and get Verge, man. I'm a get them and corner them and teach them, Calvinism ain't, whatever. And so my coworker heard me talking about that, and he was like, hey, you want to learn about it? I was like, sure. And I'm thinking like, yeah, you're gonna teach me the ways, and then I'm gonna flip it and
and then
show
teach
you your
something, right?
Yeah, exactly, man. That kind of arrogance, man. And so went to his office, man, and he was like, okay, every day at lunchtime, come by, we'll go through the Westminster Confession. And so we did. We literally went through line on line, scripture reference. He would read it, turn around, we would discuss it. By the end of it, because he was Presbyterian, I agree with everything except baptizing babies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like the light bulb when I was like, dang, like I think I'm a Calvinist. I believe
the light bulb went off.
Yeah,
no
man.
pun intended.
Ding ding.
Maybe you had a ding moment.
Yeah, man. So that was the transition for me, man. And when we finished, Westminster, he was like, okay, this is what you need to do. Download the Ligonier app, Grace to You app, True for Life. Start listening to those. And I started listening to him, man. It was just like, I always had headphones on, just listening to MacArthur, RC. I would spend a Saturday, get a notebook and YouTube, and just, because before, with Be Not Deceived, I was, conspiracy theory and Illuminati, all of that stuff. I was doing all of that on a Saturday, but now it was, MacArthur and RC and Piper, and I really enjoyed it, man. And then kind of started going down the podcast, because I didn't know what a podcast was until the guy told me about it. He was like, start listening to these podcasts. I was like, oh, what's a podcast? And that's when I started listening. And then I found like the I think in the Reform Forum, which is I call them the OGs, and White Horse Inn. And I stumbled across the pubcast, the Reform Pubcast, Les and Tanner. And I was like, yo, you can have fun while talking about theology, because in my mind, theology was just this ivory
boring
tower,
right?
Like this super deep whatever. But hearing Les and Tanner talk about craft beer and theology, I was like, wow, you could do that, like like a kid, man. And so I was like, man, I can do that, like. And so I brought the idea back to Virgil and T. Barlow and all those guys. And I was like, yo, we need to do this podcast thing, man. And so we was going to do it. It was going to be all of us, kind of like a round table, just kind of going on current events kind of thing. Because we did it before. If anybody's familiar with Blog Talk Radio, it's an old like pirate online radio station that people used to do kind of like a live recording. We used to do that with the Be Not Deceived page. And so I was like, we can do that for this podcast thing. And so anytime you're dealing with multiple people and getting them in the same place, it's tough. It's tough to get with people's schedule and life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. And so I was like, we never put out any content. We'll put out one, and then I can't get nobody together. And I had the sermon audio app. I opened the sermon audio app, and it said Steve Lawson in Greenville, South Carolina. That's where I was at the time. I was like, oh, snap, Steve Lawson in town. I'm going to go hear him preach. And so went to hear Steve Lawson preach. And right behind me was Todd Friel from Wretched Radio, sitting right behind me in the pew. And when it was over, I met him, shook his hand, and told him I enjoyed his work. Then I pitched my podcast idea. I was like, man, I'm thinking about doing a podcast and this and that. He was like, man, you need to do it. Like, there's not enough Black voices and Black perspective, in the reform world. And he really encouraged me that night. And I said, I'll do it, man, but you got to be a guest on my show, like, and and he was like, yeah, man, I'll do it. And so that really kind of sparked the whole interview style as far as the bar goes. And so because I couldn't get my partners on board, I just decided to do guests every week. I was like, listen, fellas, I know y'all busy. I'm gonna work on this podcast thing. I think I can make something happen with it. Once I get it up and running, man, we'll see if we can get y'all, I'll get y'all up too, once I get some traction. And so I went on the grind, man, 2 to 3 years, just, every Tuesday dropping guests. People were surprisingly saying yes.
Yeah.
People that I, like, okay, thank you, and it just began to grow, man. And then I got to the point where I was ready to bring them on. And T. Barlow was one. He had his podcast called B.A.R's Biblical Reform Spitters, where he would interview Christian hip hop artists or singers or whatever. And then we tried first with Virgil solo. It was called man, I forgot the name of it. Drive or something. It was something about Drive. It was a solo Virgil podcast.
So I have a quick question for you. So
yeah.
I see that you're throwing the name Virgil out, and for anyone listening, if you don't know who he is,
I'm getting
a big deal in the podcast world. Yeah. So how did you even meet him? Like,
Facebook, man. Just he had this thing. Yeah, he had this thing called False Teacher Fridays, where he would, and that when I saw him doing that, I thought, hey, this guy, need to be doing this on my page, the Be Not Seed page, and so that's how we connected through Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was years ago, almost 6-7 years ago now.
Before his schedule was completely packed out.
Well, yeah. And I'm the reason why it's packed out. That's why
there you go.
So yeah, man. So we tried that with Virgil. That didn't work. Then I decided to, let's make this a podcast network, because I had seen other models of podcast networks. And I was like, well, shoot, man, I got my own. I know enough people, to start my own. And that's what I did, man. I got with, I think the very first podcast that was added to the podcast network that I didn't know personally, they no longer with us, is Pastor Discussion. They reached out and said, hey, man, I think it'd be cool to join your network. And so we brought them in. And then there were quite a few other people that actually came to me to help them start their podcast. And when I heard their concept, I was like, bet, like, you'll be good on my network. What do you think? And fast forward, man, to about, I guess, 2 years ago now, I interviewed this young gentleman named Daryl Harrison on my show. And it's probably still one of the top shows on my podcast. But he just blew it out of the water, man, just talking and speaking truths that most people weren't hearing. And when that conversation was over, I was like, yo, this dude sounded like Virgil, like Virgil, like this dude, y'all sounded like y'all say the kind of same thing, whatever. Virgil's like, oh, okay. He was like, hey, if you don't mind, I like to, interview him too. And so the following episode, Virgil calls Daryl, and Virgil interviews Daryl on the B.A.R podcast. That episode's still up. And Virgil's like, oh man, yeah, I like this guy. Like, this is a good connection. And I was like, okay, man, y'all I think this could be a podcast. And so I reached out to Daryl. I was like, hey man, what do you think about doing a podcast? And Daryl was like, no, I'm a writer. I don't do podcasts. like I don't that. Like, yeah, man. And so because the B.A.R podcast was his first interview. That's the first time he ever did it. And so I went to V. I was like, hey man. So he said he's a writer, man. He don't want to do it. V was like, man, let me talk to him. So V talked to him. And I was like, well, here's the thing. We're gonna say all you got to worry about is, the content. I'll take care of everything else. And he agreed to that, and that's still the case still today. So that is the makes of the Just Thinking podcast, one of the top podcasts in America. Been in the top 100 in the overall, also number 1 in the Christian podcast, I guess, category. And both of those guys have dream jobs. I think because of the podcast. I don't know if they want to give me that credit yet, but I think Daryl is the social media dean of social media at Grace to You, and Virgil is the operations director at G3. So many speaking engagements and things came out of that, man. And all of that's a part of my story, man, because one thing that in this whole process, because it was my idea and I kind of pushed it along and supported them, we've kept kind of a three-headed monster when it comes to the Just Thinking podcast. But that is how I got into podcasting. That's how the network will form. Once you have a number one podcast, other podcasts take notice and other companies take notice. And, we got a few sponsors from it. We got quite a few dope podcasts have joined the network. And, that's just the picture of God's grace, man. No idea we would be where we are. No idea we have so many podcasts in the network. There was nothing to tell me that 6 years ago, sitting in that church when Todd Free was sitting behind me, nothing would do that. And what makes
I think you made a good point there, and I just want to say something about that.
Go ahead, please.
So you said I had no idea it was going to be this, right? And this is a good applicable message to those who are listening. When you do God's work and you stay faithful, he does amazing things with what he's called you to do. Yep. So if you're starting a podcast or if you're starting a ministry that you feel burdened and called to do these things, just stay faithful. That's the most important thing you could do, because as Dawain has said, and we even say it, you don't know what God's going to do. And you look back in time, you're like, wow, I can't believe God has done X, Y, Z. And it's not for the fame. It's not for the money. Because most of us podcasters do it and don't make a penny just because we love it. That's right. At the end of the day, you look back and you say, wow, I can't believe what God has done, because it's grown for his glory and for his purpose, and it's advanced all for him. So I just wanted to stop you there because you said that, and we feel the same way when we meet you and we talk to you, and we're like, wow, we can't believe we're a part of the B.A.R network. Like that how you just said that, we say the same thing, because it's like, it's a dream come true. When we were at G3 and we were surrounded by people who we admire, like yourself, we're like, wow, we can't believe we're here right now. Just stay faithful, people. God does crazy things. And you might not be rich. You might not be healthy. But guess what? God's going to do amazing things with what he's called you to do.
That's right. No, I'm glad you doubled down on that, man, because there's so much truth to that. And success, like you said, isn't measured in money. It isn't measured in fame. That is the least of our worries, man. And when I talk about, the blessings of God, I talk about the people that come up and say what you said or done, has impacted my life. Yeah. At G3, I had a guy, tears in his eyes, walk up to me and thank me for starting the Just Thinking podcast. And I was like, I didn't even know how to react. Like, I've never, a grown man with tears in your eye, like, and a lot of times we think what we're doing is small, man, but God takes that small and he affect lives, man. So that's my story, bro. Like, I'm just a humble guy, man, that just love good content and love providing good content for God's people, man. And just grateful for everything that has came out of this journey, and we're still rolling, man. My podcast is still going. Just Thinking is still doing great things, and the network is still growing. I got some other podcasts lined up to possibly be joining, and we'll see what God has planned, man.
Yeah, God has brought us to you, so it's definitely still growing, and I know a few others that might be potentially interested too.
Yeah, man.
And it's really also that we can come together, and when you see that B.A.R logo on any show, you know that we're serious about the Bible and about theology and truth. So that's really why we come together. We've attached ourselves to him because we want to be known as a show that stands for truth, just like Just Thinking and it seems like 100 other podcasts that are in
18 right
network.
now.
18 now. It's 100. the angels are with us.
I
No,
can dig it.
man, it seems like so many of us, but it's 18, but we all stand for that.
Yep.
We all stand for truth. We all stand for exposition. We all stand for going line by line, verse by verse, understanding the historical context. We
Yep.
all have different styles and approaches.
Yep.
Just Thinking is totally different than us. We're different than some of the other shows. But if you see that bar logo on it, you know what you're getting. And you can click on any of the shows and you know that you're getting people that stand for what I just communicated.
Yep.
But if they do want to know about the other shows, the other amazing shows on the network, where did they go to find that, Dawain?
So you can go to thebarpodcast.com, click on that network tab. Excuse me. And this is all I'm going to get on my internet guy. Mr. Charles is working on the bar.network website. It's not ready yet. So until then, go to thebarpodcast.com, click on the Bar Network tab, and you'll see a link tree that has all the podcasts on there. Make sure you guys check them out, man. There's so many. There's podcasts for everybody. There's have two. Man, I actually got quite a few female podcasts. Whether you're a young lady chasing truth, if you're a homemaker, I got a podcast called Thankful Homemaker. If you are looking for biblical counseling, got the Women's Hope podcast. So it's just so many opportunities. And then on the Latino side, I also have Solarcast, and God has just blessed us so much, man. I was trying to see if I can name quite a few of them. Also, I got my list up now. Also, we got the Antithesis with Owen Strand. He's on the network. Yeah. Abide podcast, two stay-at-home moms. All Things Theology. My man K-Dub, he does more or less the apologetic side and cultural. One of the newer ads, The Word in the Glass, they do a lot like Bible Dingers, just a little bit more serious.
Yeah, right.
Big shout out to Broken Bones podcast, my man Jacob. I think right now he's going through A.W. Pink's one of his books, Matter of Theology, Reform Meditation, Deep Dive Discipleship, well, man, Kofi, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Lives. Got a shout out Miss Arlie out in California. She do amazing interviews. And then That Deity, though, my man EC up in PA, man. He does a lot of apologetic stuff as well. And then Truth and Fire podcast is also on the network, and she does a lot of cultural issues. She has a huge following, bro. Like, she had a meetup and everything at G3. But that's awesome. That's the list. I dropped the list. I mentioned everybody at least once. So hope you guys check us out.
Yeah, please do. And all those shows are friends of our show. So if you love us, you'll love them. And if you love them, you'll love us. So we're a big, happy family of people who take God seriously and want to do it for the glory of God. So, Dawain, it's been great to hear your story. I heard you had an amazing testimony. I didn't realize how amazing it was. Surely entertaining.
I hope I didn't disappoint.
No, you definitely didn't. You definitely didn't.
Awesome.
I appreciate your story. I appreciate you allowing us in the network, and we really look forward to what God has for us in the network with all of us together as a family, not just our podcast, but all of us together. We are looking forward to what God has for us in the future.
Amen.
So thank you so much for everything you've done for us. Thank you for getting on here and telling others about your story. Man, we really appreciate you. We love you, man.
Bro, love y'all too, man, for sure. Thanks for having me.
And I can't wait to get in shape with you, bro.
Let's go, man. E2M for life.
I look at his progress, and I'm like, I want to get in shape too. So not only is he helping me enrich myself theologically and on my podcast, he's living proof that people can get in shape.
That's right.
So if they do want to get in shape, we're going to be in a program together called E2M.
Yep, e2mfitness.com. That's right.
And we don't get paid to say that.
No,
but we get paid by getting benefited with our health, right?
That's right, man. I'm telling you, it's amazing. I tell everybody about it. The program is amazing. They put together the perfect combination to get you in shape in 8 weeks, to get you, headed towards your fitness goals.
You're telling me I'm gonna look just as good as you in 8 weeks, as we were saying?
Very close. I mean, it's gonna be hard to look as good as me. You can get close in 8 weeks.
How many weeks are you in?
Man, I am This is 6, 7. No, 15. This is 20, week 20.
Wow. You've been in it to win it. That's a long time.
I'm here, man. I'm here.
That is awesome, man. Well, thanks for the motivation. Thanks for the encouragement. Thanks for the enrichment.
Yes, sir.
And we'll speak soon.
Sounds good, brother. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
Later.
Bye.